So first and foremost, we believe in a clean, transparent supply path. And some of the signals that we pass today are things like the content rating, the genre, the live stream signal, so that all brands and advertisers understand what they're buying. We believe that any brand can come into Philo and, be it as strict as they are on their brand safety, they can follow anything that they deem as necessary. On top of that, though, I will say that a transparent signal comes with a price. I believe that if there is a publisher that's out there that's providing these signals, they should be rewarded and incentivized to provide these to brands in order to have the most clean path for the buyer.
So you talk about transparency. How can advertisers gain better visibility?
Yeah, so I think what's really important is everyone looks at this idea of SPO. And I think it's really important, but I think prior to optimizing the path, we need to identify the path and confirm that path. So I look at it as both a pre-buy and a post-buy. In a world where we are buying programmatically, and at Philo, about 100% of our buys are programmatic or direct resellers, so it's very important to us that brands understand what they're buying. And the way that they can do this is to have that human connection. We work in a world where it's machines talking to machines, and that's fantastic, but it starts with the high-level conversation, which is a human-to-human interaction with the publisher. So when I talk about confirming the path, what I mean is in a pre-campaign or pre-buy environment, understand what the actual path is that you're going after. And there's tools that are out there that can help them. Things like ads.txt allows them to understand what is the actual path that is the best and realist way to get this inventory. On a post-campaign basis, there's post-campaign reporting that an advertiser can ask either a publisher to provide, or they can work with their SSPs and DSPs to identify the best reporting that shows essentially what they've purchased. They can confirm that based off of what they've identified during the pre-campaign, and they can identify any areas that are of concern and go after those.
And as far as data and measurement, what sort of improvements do you think are critical for CTV?
Yeah, I think one of the most critical improvements that we need to understand is that the idea of passing signaling has to be a two-way street. I understand that on the publisher side, we pass as much signaling as we can today. We believe that in a programmatic environment, a buyer can see both audience and contextual signals on every ad request that we make today. That said, that same type of transparency needs to come down from the buy side and the advertisers and brands. So what this means is today there's some loss in terms of understanding what the actual creative brand is or the creative category is that comes down to us. Where that comes into issue is that it's hard for us sometimes to be able to, without knowing who the brand is, things like FCAP, things like pacing, things like ad repetition are hard for us to manage without really understanding that. So while I do feel that we pass a lot of signals, there needs to be also a conversation coming down from the demand side of what's actually passing to us as well.
And so how can the industry ensure that CTV campaigns deliver strong ROI?
Sure. So ROI is defined by the brand. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. I think any buy where it's on CTV, it's targeted contextually and to the audience correctly, is something that's really, really important. On Philo, we see about 80% of our users watching in a live environment, which is an unskippable environment. So right there in itself is an extremely engaged audience.
What are some of the technology innovations or trends you're excited about?
Yeah, so I think there's two areas. I think what's really interesting is there's companies like Pier 39 that have identified ways to pass more contextual signals in a privacy compliant way to brands. And I think it's going to be really interesting. And we're going to see a renaissance in this where I think there's going to be a few winners that bubble up to the top that they're going to be able to identify themselves. And I think also at the same time, there needs to be specs written that are done by the IAB, things where on the audience side, things like the EID values where we can put multiple audience signals, we should be able to put multiple contextual signals as well. I think that's going to be beneficial going forward. Continued, I think, as I've mentioned earlier, that the idea of having a two-way street down from the demand side to us is really important. So things like the IAB Tech Lab that's created, which is the Creative ID Framework, or ASIF, is really important to us, and we feel that it's going to be really, really good for us to understand what is coming down to us, having the transparency behind the actual creative so that we can protect ourselves against repetitive ads that may be shown to our users. There's a study from 2023 where Nexon indicated about 43% of users will switch to a completely different service for the same show if they see repetitive ads. What we don't want to happen is for us as a service is to have a user leave just because of repetitive ads. So if we can correctly identify what these ads are and remove repetitive ads being shown to users, we feel that it's a win-win for all parties.